Okay, welcome back. We're, as usual, a little bit thin to start off here, but I'm going to get things started. Some housekeeping for our regular attendees. Next week is the Thanksgiving break at Stanford, so we are not having a seminar next week, but we have two more to wrap up autumn quarter after that. So next week there's no seminar, but there will be the following 2 weeks. As usual, we are grateful for the support of the Bill Lane Center for the American West, the Woods Institute for the Environment, as well as Stanford Sustainability Data Science. I'm excited to just provide a different perspective today to the wildfire problem. We are extremely pleased and privileged to have Seth Schalet here with us today, who is currently the CEO of the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. He is a CEO, board member, and advisor whose background bridges philanthropy, technology, public and private sectors. For the past 35 years, Seth has led global sales organizations, marketing and operations for various startups, Fortune 500 divisions, venture capital, and private equity-backed organizations with extensive experience in mergers and acquisitions. For the past 13 years, Seth has been a nonprofit CEO. He has served as a board of director member for numerous nonprofits and grant-making foundations, including for family foundations. This experience includes serving as board chair, chair of grant-making, and chair of governance committees. As I said before, he is the current CEO of Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. He has been so since 2020. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Communications and an MBA with a concentration in finance and certificates in operations from Stanford and nonprofit financial management from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. I think you're going to be really excited to hear Seth's perspectives and just providing some context of how we can look at wildfires from a nonprofit perspective. People may think that the government is the solution to the problem, but I think he'll show us otherwise. So welcome, Seth. Glad to have you here, and take it away.
Thank you very much, Professor Fong. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Great. And I appreciate the introduction. Thank you. And, the phrase, the government, reminds me, going back, I think it was Ronald Reagan that once said, what is the most problematic phrase, or something to that effect? It was, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And the fact is that that's not true. And one of the things that's interesting, and I hope to convey in our conversation today, is, it's really about robust government and private partnerships. There's a lot that the philanthropic sector and the public sector can do and is doing together to address climate and, as we'll find out today, the wildfire issue. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Professor Fong. And again, my name is Seth Schalet, and I'm the CEO of a local nonprofit, the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, and we are based in Saratoga, but we operate all throughout the wildland urban interface areas of Santa Clara County. And as you'll find out a little bit later, we've expanded some of our services, particularly technology services, to both Santa Cruz and San Mateo counties. Of course, now it doesn't want to cooperate. Let me just make sure that it is moving. Are you seeing the slides change?
I am not.
You haven't shared your screen yet, so I took over, and so you need to reshare your screen. I think.
Reshare. Thanks, Derek. Let me go ahead and do that. That might be the problem. Same screen?
You are now in your view, so you probably want to change the view. So this is presenter.
You would think after 3 years of doing this enough, I would have it down, and I do this all the time because we do a lot of presentations. So I will talk while I get it to shift into the presenter mode. But without further ado, I think everybody that's in attendance today has some interest, some general knowledge, maybe robust knowledge about the wildfire issue. And the reality is it's something that is, frankly, going to get worse before it gets better. But therein lies an opportunity for us, both at the nonprofit sector and also at the government sector, to really make a robust difference. And we're going to talk about how we as a nonprofit have done that and how we've had to evolve our business model to get there. Success, right?
We're still seeing your view.
Well, let's move forward because I don't have notes.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
fine.
see
Yeah, as long as you don't have any
everything
funny notes that you want to hold private.
No,
This is
I
fine.
have nothing that I think would have the Secret Service come haul me away.
Okay.
So let's have a conversation, and I'll try to readjust it here. But in any event, our core mission is mobilizing the people of Santa Clara to protect their homes, communities, and environment from wildfires. Now, that's a pretty broad statement, and there's a lot of specifics that go into that, and hopefully I'll be able to convey those as we go through the next slide. Let me ask, does anybody here know what date this image might have been taken? Well, if you're in the Bay Area, you remember this date well, and it was September 9th, 2020. And that's the day that we all experienced, what we refer to as the orange skies. And the reality is, unfortunately, we'll see more of these days to come going forward. And it doesn't mean that we can't have a significant impact on the problem. In fact, we can and we will. But what we're seeing from 3 years ago is going to follow us over the next 15, 20, 30 years until we really are able to make a significant impact. So let me just share with everybody, I'm sure everyone is well versed in the general challenges and the fact that wildfires are increasing. In fact, I'm more than glad to pass along some great studies to the attendees today. There's been a lot of recent studies, particularly focusing on the US West and the area that we're in California, that show that the area and the impact for wildfires has only gotten worse over the last 20 years. And what do I mean by worse? Well, if you look at the CAL FIRE index of the 20 largest wildfires by acres, and I don't have this committed to memory, but something like the last 12 have come in the last 20 years here in the Bay Area. Also, if you look at structures destroyed by wildfire under the CAL FIRE index going back 20 years, I think it's something like in the number 10 or 11 in terms of structures destroyed. And that's because a lot of the housing growth is coming in what we call the wildland urban interface, WUI for short. And the challenge is, as we build more and deeper into the wildland urban interface, we get greater housing density. And that's where we have the opportunity to create significant disastrous implications for wildfire. Something along the lines of 90 to 93% of all wildfires are human caused. So as you get population density, increase things like catalytic converters, all those kind of things, you're going to see a greater impact. I wanted to share this slide because, as we'll discuss today, the Fire Safe Council has led the current community wildfire protection program. And CAL FIRE, who manages the local wildfire areas here with our fire agencies, recently redid what they call their fire severity zones, FRAP in their vernacular, but it's the fire severity zone mapping. And in the most recent mapping here in Santa Clara, we have 40% of the WUI area is classified as very high fire zone. So clearly, locally, we have significant risk. And as we build out more into the wildland urban interface, that risk only gets compounded. Now, it's not just here in Santa Clara County and in Northern California, but really all throughout California and all throughout the US West. And if you think about it, right, as the wildfire problem has become bigger, more frequent, the cost to state budgets, not just California's budget, but all state budgets, particularly those for the West, have been astronomically increasing. In fact, it's on a trajectory that will make it unmanageable, right? And we look at wildfire, historically, most of the money related to wildfire has gone towards suppression, right? Putting the fire out after it has started. And having firefighters, having equipment, all of that is critically important. But CAL FIRE and all of the other fire agencies now know that you can't suppress your way to success. We have to start thinking differently about wildfire, looking at early mitigation and early detection. And that's the direction that the Santa Clara Fire Safe Council has moved, and I'll share a little bit more with you on the coming screens. Locally, this is part of the new mapping that we have included in our community wildfire protection plan. This is one of the most robust high-risk maps. And if you can see it, you can see where those areas in red are pretty significant. The areas in yellow, obviously, are slightly less significant. And the areas in blue, which tend to be concentrated largely in the non-WUI downtown areas, are at the lowest risk. But clearly, you can tell from this image here that we are all sitting in areas with significant wildfire impact. So let me tell you a little bit about the origins of the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, because I think there's a lot of synergy between how we've grown up as an organization and how many nonprofits have historically started. So we were started as a grassroots organization back in 2001, mostly by local residents in and around Saratoga, in and around Los Gatos, but local people that were really concerned, frankly, about the wildfire risk to their own homes, right? And they were concerned that obviously they saw the needs that the fire agencies and the needs that CAL FIRE were being asked to complete. And they wanted to start an organization that could contribute mostly to reducing their individual home risk, but then putting a broader lens on that, how could they reduce the risk to the county? So the organization started commensurate with most volunteer grassroots nonprofits, an all-volunteer organization. Started with a board. The board was basically comprised of local folk, but a few ex-CAL FIRE and a few ex-local fire agency personnel. And so that background, using CAL FIRE skill sets and local agency personnel, really gave the organization a lens into firefighting and understanding fire behavior, how to do things like predictive analytics, the impacts of drought, et cetera. But a full volunteer nonprofit organization for the first, I would say, almost 15 to 16 years of its existence. Over that time, a couple of the things that the Fire Safe Council has contributed to, which I think are really important and show where a nonprofit and for-profit partnership, a public and private partnership, can really make a difference. So we now have paid staff, and we also have a robust advisory board and a robust board. Now, our advisory boards are made up of mostly, not exclusively, but mostly ex-forest fighting personnel. They're made up of instructors at other universities that are ecologists, fire ecologists. So a lot of real discipline in fire. But we bring together the capability as a nonprofit to cross jurisdictions. You know, one of the challenges that I learned early on in my private sector career, and that's followed through the nonprofit my nonprofit career, is, you know, at the end of the day, it's easy for people to get into silos, and it's easy for organizations and business units to become quite siloed, focused on what they do. And we'll talk about the role that the Fire Safe Council has played in really going across those and being an enabler and a provider. We're also not a private agency. We're not a county agency. So we have found historically that people in the community are more amenable to working and engaging with us. They don't have a fear that if we come onto their property and we see something that may be in violation, we're going to write them up and issue a ticket. That's not our modus operandi. We want to educate people on wildfire risk. We want to help them become more resilient. So we have found that we work very effectively across the multi-agency and multi-jurisdictions. Over the years, and you'll see from the following slides, we've really become a trusted resource for wildfire education. We have a whole robust community outreach and education program that does courses on how do you evacuate from a wildfire? How do you maintain defensible space? How do you look at the zones around your house and do what you can do locally, not only to protect your house, but to add greater resiliency to the community you're in? So we've really, over now the last 20 years, gained a reputation as a trusted partner and one that has really contributed to the success of the local agencies. But I think where we have become to be, where our perception has changed from what had started as a grassroots nonprofit to now a true robust partner is, first, in 2017, we were awarded what became a $7 million contract. It was to do a 6.5-mile fuel break from Los Gatos heading towards over the hill and heading towards Santa Cruz. That year, Governor Newsom had 35 high priority wildfire mitigation projects. This one was the largest of them all. And it turned out to be an 18-month, 20-month contract that the Fire Safe Council was awarded. And we, in essence, helped to work efficiently with all of the partners, Caltrans, the local fire agencies, on coordinating the effort, on kind of being the glue to help manage the project. And I think that project, which started before I joined, but which ended in the last 3 or 4 months of my tenure, really created a template that when I joined, I saw there was a template to transform the nonprofit organization and our business model from one that was a typical nonprofit dependent upon grants, maybe individual donations, to one that could really carve out a niche in really robust, large project management and ultimately leveraging technology. This project is one that we're most proud of. We were awarded what was, at that time, about 2 years ago, the largest forest health project that was ever awarded. And it's a collaboration between us, San Jose Water, Santa Clara County Parks, Mid-Peninsula Open Space District, and CAL FIRE. We at the Fire Safe Council, right, we don't own any land. So we need the landowners, the utilities, San Jose Water, Mid-Peninsula Open Space, Santa Clara County Parks, to make their land available for wildfire mitigation. And we're quite proud of this project. It's in the Los Gatos Creek watershed, and it's roughly about 1,000 or so acres, a multi-year project for both forest health treatments and wildfire mitigation. And this project really, along with the predecessor, the Highway 17 project, really changed how our partners and how the county viewed us in terms of our skill set and our capacity. So as we worked with the board to look at what is the model and how do we transition from a typical nonprofit that is reliant on donations and grants, and if any of you have experience in the nonprofit sector, we know that grants and donations are pretty lumpy. You might have a good stretch, and then you might have stretches where you fail to win a grant or you're not getting a regular flow of donations. And when we looked at our business model, we said we wanted to provide ongoing, consistent support. And you can't do that on a donation and grants only model. So we took a step back, myself and the board, and said, let's take a look at our pillars of sustainability. How could we reorient our business model so that we can provide robust sustainability and add value and add capacity? And the first was looking at the social piece. What do? Well, we preserve and protect life, property, and critical infrastructure throughout Santa Clara County. Pretty significant. We're a platform that we think, and we will show, is now a critical one for helping to advance wildfire research. And we want to put an equity lens. And, you know, over the last couple of years, I think the term social justice and equity lens has been perhaps overstated. But when we look at an equity lens, what we mean is we know that in the highest severity zones within Santa Clara County, it also has some of the lowest income per capita communities. And like anything, you tend to see a concentration in winning grants and winning projects in the more affluent communities. And so for us to reduce the risk in the county, we also want to look at an equitable social justice risk. How could we help eliminate the impact of high fire severity risks, wildfire smoke, and other areas to parts of the community that aren't as affluent? And we'll talk about what we're doing. And of course, we now partner with all of the agencies, the towns, and the county, because wildfire, whether it be wildfire smoke or an actual wildfire, poses real significant economic risk. Imagine if Palo Alto, or a good portion of Palo Alto, was lost in a wildfire. Hopefully, nobody lost their lives, but you've got budgetary impacts, significant economic impacts. And now we're partnering with all of the agencies to help address and be a thought partner on thinking through those issues. About 18 months ago, we were awarded a grant by CAL FIRE to update the community-wide Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP. And I don't know how many of you know about CWPPs, but an interesting data point is Stanford has their own community wildfire protection plan. In fact, I brought the Stanford team in probably 14, 15 months ago to present on their community wildfire protection plan so that we can understand their lessons learned. So Lucy Wicks and Aaron and some of the other folks that I think Professor Fong knows well, we wanted to see how they completed their plan. And so we just completed the first phase of the CWPP. It was about an 18-month project. And back at the end of August and the beginning of September, that blue document that you see right there, we released it both as a document, but what's new this year, and I can't show you through our presentation, but I can put some links in the chat when we do some talking. We now have an online real-time interactive story map. So you can now go look at all of the wildfire projects in Santa Clara County. Where are they? Are they connected? Do they have gaps? And that's part of what we're going to manage over the next 3 to 5 years, is help to fill out and manage and keep that template updated. I think I've talked a little bit about what CWPPs are. The requirement is to have those updated every 10 years. The Fire Safe Council helped update and led the update to the 2016 plan, and the one that we just completed takes that 2016 plan and updates it even further. It digitizes it, it puts it online with a robust community engagement. So as we did this, you'll be able to see when I send you a link of the online version, it really has detailed mapping. So we worked with a partner called Tuckman Geospatial. They went and spent almost 2 years, what we call ground truthing the vegetation mapping in San Mateo, Santa Cruz, and Santa Clara County, basically doing a robust remapping. And we decided to incorporate their remapping into our CWPP, along with the recently released CAL FIRE high fire severity zone maps. So we think our CWPP is unique because it really brings a lens on new mapping. Okay, so as a nonprofit organization, right, we historically have been dependent upon grants. In fact, when I joined, grant income was probably 85 to 87% of the overall revenue for the organization. We love grants. I think many of you have either applied for or have been awarded grants. Grants are fantastic, but when you get a project-based grant, and by a project-based grant, maybe I'll say, let's treat or do a fuel break. They only pay for the project-specific costs, right? They don't pay for costs like administrative staff, fundraising costs, right? So for us to be a sustainable nonprofit, it was very clear that we had to diversify our revenue, keep grants front and center, but expand our revenue and leverage our expertise to use technology as the vehicle and the the kind of point of demarcation on how we're going to become a multi-revenue stream organization. But right here lists some of the recent grants, and you can see that we've won quite a significant amount of money, but almost all of these are project specific. So in order to do that, we had to really look back and say, who are the direct beneficiaries of the Fire Safe Council? Because those that are direct beneficiaries, hopefully we can work with them and convince them to partner with us, right? They're getting the benefit of our services. So let's talk about how we can collaborate even deeper. And we put a list together, right? Obviously, state and regional fire departments, but all the counties and municipalities, whether it's Palo Alto, whether it's Saratoga, whether it's down in Gilroy or Morgan Hill, they all benefit by the regional wildfire risk mitigation that we do. How about insurance providers, right? They're most concerned with mitigating the losses in their portfolio. And it's no secret here. I'm sure everybody in this program today knows that it's becoming harder and harder to maintain and retain wildfire insurance here in California. It's not uncommon to find out that people are getting dropped. And if they get dropped, they have to apply for what's known as the FAIR plan, which was really originally only meant to be a stopgap measure as last resort. Well, we determined that all the work we do, frankly, has value in all of these areas. So as we looked with our board and myself and the staff, we said, how can we evolve our business model to really become one that has multiple revenue streams, more sustainable, but as a nonprofit, we always have to keep mission at the top of mind. And how could we deepen our mission, become a more impactful player and provider for those that we served? And it became pretty clear, at least to me early on, because I spent my first 25 years in the technology sector. I ran sales, operations, as Professor Fong had said, but I also ran what are known as value-added resellers and companies that made OEM products or original equipment manufacturers. And it became clear to me that one of the distinct advantages as a nonprofit we could provide is to help get technology into the field quicker. How could we get towns? How could we get fire agencies to pilot test new technologies from entrepreneurs, determine their efficacy? Do they work? Do they show promise or not? If they show promise, can we get them to scale and help them become enmeshed throughout the county? So that's part of the path we really set on, is how could we take our experience in all these large projects, put a technology lens on top of that, and become a more impactful partner. So as we step back, we said, let's look at a series of integrated solutions, right? We don't want to look at wildfire technology or certain products only in a siloed sense, but how could we look at them across at a landscape level? So that required us to look at, well, what is robust landscape level wildfire mitigation? What's taking place in Santa Clara County and in other surrounding counties today? And how could we add another layer of capacity and expertise? So we looked at what products and what technology are out there. I probably spent 15, 18 months along with the board, but really my role was to lead the effort, explore the breadth of wild technology solutions out there. There were already products in the market, but there's a robust set of entrepreneurs that are using technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, to really focus in on specific aspects of wildfire risk. So I spent a good solid year plus doing that, looking at the entrepreneurs both locally and frankly globally, and where might we be able to partner with some of these products to help them get to market sooner, to help pilot test some of these. And so I'm now going to talk about how we did that, how we've transitioned our business from just doing what's known as hazardous fuel reduction to really focusing on new technologies and being able to integrate those technologies. What this slide shows here is over the last year, we have signed a number of reseller partnerships where the Fire Safe Council now represents the partners that you see here on the screen. Dryad is a German-based company that makes and develops artificial intelligence enabled wildfire detection systems. N5 Sensors is a US-based company out of Bethesda, Maryland, that makes wildfire sensors. And Fire Scout is a Korean technology that makes the AI algorithms that help sit on top of wildfire cameras to bring the AI technology into a more robust capability. We now are a reseller for all three of those products, and I'll talk about some of our successes. In addition to becoming a reseller, I've got a great thought partner on my board. Gentleman's name is Jared Lewis. Jared works for, and he's the environmental manager for San Jose Water. And he is vested with maintaining and managing San Jose Water's watershed, of which just in our area, I think comprises something along the lines of 6,000 acres of watershed. Now, that watershed provides drinking water for a large portion of Silicon Valley, but it also supports ecosystem health. And so as Jared and I started to jointly collaborate, we found that we had some similarities and ideas about how to create a mitigation and early detection network that we could start here in the watershed and then maybe roll out to surrounding San Mateo and Santa Cruz counties. And that's exactly what we did. And so what we thought was, let's use wildfire sensors, because in terms of the most early detection, it's our belief that today, right now, wildfire sensor technology offers the opportunity to detect wildfires at their earliest stage. You can robustly detect wildfires with all of the wildfire cameras, such as Pano, which is a San Francisco-based maker of wildfire cameras and AI technology. We're even leveraging the Alert California network. But in terms of early detection, we wanted to start with centers and then maybe create through application programming interfaces, APIs, the ability to connect the sensors to the wildfire cameras. So if a sensor spots or senses or smells smoke, how do we get a wildfire camera to point directly at that location and determine what it is? So what you see before you is kind of an example of a network that we've actually built. I mentioned in the prior slide, we're now a reseller for N5. We're now a reseller for Dryad and Alchera. And I'll talk a little bit about how we've actually installed some of these in and around the Los Gatos Creek watershed and what that means for the start of our early wildfire detection network. But I think what's unique about our network, and I hope to convey here, is we want to be very open. We want to look at new entrepreneurs, people that are creating new solutions, and how might they fit and plug into our open source solution network. So we have a robust partnership with our friends at San Jose State University. San Jose State has the Fire Weather Research Laboratory. The head of that program, Derek and I know quite well. His name is Craig Clements. And basically, we've probably all watched the Weather Channel. And, when you follow folks that are hurricane hunters, the folks here, one of the things they do is they're wildfire hunters. They go right into the midst of a wildfire and do robust analysis. We've actually partnered with them on some research. We've partnered with UC Berkeley. And of course, we have a relationship with Stanford that we're looking to expand to help with research and help inform our field and provide a career path for our employees that also might want to get into wildfire ecology. I'm almost at the end of the presentation, but one of the things that I wanted to announce today, we're actually going to make a formal announcement tomorrow, but we've just initiated a brand new partnership with an organization called Frontline Wildfire Defense. They've been around for a number of years, but they're a true startup. In the last month and a half, they've closed a new $6 million round of financing. And what do they make? They make solutions to protect your home. And we'll talk about that, because as we expand our network, we now want to work with homeowners that are in high-risk areas to help reduce the risk of their home burning in a wildfire. So our first foray is to be a referral partner with the frontline wildfire defense. They make a solution that's AI enabled, and it's a solution that you can manage on your phone. It's app-based and web-based, where Frontline installs wildfire sprinkler systems, and these are not standard systems that you may see in a typical home, but they're really made for wildfire detection, wildfire mitigation at the home level. And so here is a couple of samples of what you'll see on the app. You're able to manage it, and you can also manage this remotely. So say that you're traveling or you're not at your home when a wildfire is spotted or breaks out in the area. Through your app, you can program the Frontline solutions to actually turn on when a wildfire gets within 7 miles of your home. In fact, they can automatically turn on the system for you and wet your house and your roof and your house down in advance of the wildfire being in your front yard. Here's an example of what the system looks like in real time. You could see that this is not a local system, I believe, but it's an example of how they're activating their system to wet down the house and ensure that as the flames approach, right, it will help to impede the ability for the structures to burn, allowing ultimately more time for the fire agencies to get to that area and hopefully provide support prior to the wildfire really causing significant damage or burning down the house. So that really is our path. My last slide here is I want to share with you that as a nonprofit, we have a different funding model than a nonprofit, right? We don't go out, as I did in my prior lives, and typically raise a venture capital round. There are many ways that nonprofits can receive funding and financing. Certainly, we can accept typical donations. Certainly, we can accept and take many grants. But there's also a number of interesting vehicles, whether there are program PRIs, which is a type of investment that can be provided to a nonprofit to develop and launch programs. So I want to just share with the audience as a takeaway that you can look at nonprofits from a for-profit model, an organization that develops technology to address a specific wildfire issue. You can look at it from the municipality level, CAL FIRE, agencies typically involved in firefighting, but there's also another solution, and that's a nonprofit public-private partnership. And that's what we hope to expand over the next couple of years at the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council. So I hope that's provided some insight, and hopefully you have questions, and I'm here to answer as many of those as I can. That's the end of my presentation slides, Professor Fong, and I'll turn it over to you and your audience.
Seth, that was really great. It's exciting to see what the Fire Safe Council has done from the beginning and is currently doing. And yeah, I'll open up the floor to questions. And I see Bruce on there. So, and Cody, maybe Cody, I'll go. Bruce gets a lot of preference treatment, but because he's sponsoring inherently this seminar series. But Cody, I don't think Bruce will mind. Cody, I'll give you a shot first.
Thanks, Derek, and Seth. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. I was able to catch your presentation recently on the N5 wildfire sensors that detect it through smelling, is a great way to put it. I saw on your slide here the Dryad one. I'm not familiar with that one. Are those similar?
They're similar. Similar yet different. And basically they function at the same level. They're both wildfire early detection sensors. They employ slightly different technology. For example, in the case of Dryad, which is a German company, but they have installations throughout the US, installations throughout Canada, installations throughout Europe. For example, their AI sensors, they utilize a Bosch specific sensor, where in the case of N5, they currently manufacture their own chemical sensors. But in essence, it's two sides of the same coin, different solutions, different ways to integrate that into the ecosystem.
So both detecting particulate matter and air pollution from the fires?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Thanks, Seth. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I guess I'll ask a question. I'm kind of wondering whether you've followed what's gone on in Marin, where they've gone and formed a JPA
Yes.
that gives it more steady funding and a secure sort of format for navigating the sort of cross-jurisdictional cooperations. I'm wondering, A, whether you think that that would be something that would be useful for Santa Clara, or do you feel like the current situation works for whatever reason better in Santa Clara than in Marin?
Bruce, great question. And I really do thank you for asking that. And, there are many layers to that question. It's obviously well beyond a simple yes or no question. I know the folks from Marin quite well. In fact, there's the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, and their CEO, Mark, is a friend of mine, and I brought him in to share his model and the story of how they developed the JPA over time. And long story short, you're probably aware of this, but for the audience that might not be, that process was about a 10 or 12-year process from Marin to actually ultimately get the approval for the Joint Powers Authority, which gives them the ability to maintain revenue. And at the end of the day, they get about $20 million a year in annual revenue for the JPA that they can then allocate towards specific projects. Your question is, would that work here? Every county is different, but it is something that I and our board of advisors have discussed. Obviously, it requires cooperation across the entire ecosystem here in the county, the municipalities, the county government, the individual towns. So it's something that we certainly want to explore, but even if it has significant potential, it's not something that can materialize quickly. So we have to kind of walk and chew gum at the same time and maintain our current models, introduce new models, but certainly considering a JPA-like structure here, particularly to serve the WUI areas, might have some interest. And I'm more than glad to have a deeper dialogue with you or anybody else on today's call post-presentation to discuss the path to get there.
Yeah, so I mean, do you see it as primarily a financial, in other words, if you look at the current situation, do you see the need as more financial, or do you see it as the ability, an easier ability to plan projects like fire breaks? Which would you say would be the more important need from your perspective for Santa Clara County?
Well, in your question, really, that's a combination of a bit of a chicken and egg, right? Because you can't plan without sustainable funding, right? You can plan all you want for projects, but until you have a guaranteed revenue stream to sustain those projects, they may never leave the planning board and be actually implemented in the field. So I actually think it's both. One of the challenges we see in the wildfire infrastructure space here is you often get funding from FEMA, and certainly Santa Clara County is looking at various FEMA opportunities. But the largest vehicle that we get in our area here is funding from CAL FIRE in the way of their grant programs. But grant programs are cyclical. Sometimes the state is flush, sometimes the state is not. So if you look at taxable solutions, whether it be funded by property tax, sales tax, or other mechanisms, that is a way to provide sustainable funding that you can then plan towards. So I think it's a combination of both, Bruce. I think, would I like to have more consistent and a guaranteed budget over the next 5 or 10 years? 100%. Yes, I would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one other advantage that they tout, and we've been studying, we've been doing some close work with them, and we're going to continue to do that, is that the community engagement piece, particularly with environmental groups.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how that works in Santa Clara County, and whether that's something that you could see perhaps also as an additional benefit to a more formal organization like a JPA?
Yeah, excuse me. That's an interesting question, and every county is different. Marin is a different geography, different area. Santa Clara has more agencies and more entities kind of involved in the mix. Now, we work pretty closely because all of the projects that the Fire Safe Council has to do, the fuel reduction projects, they have to be cleared for CEQA. And I think you know, and perhaps many of the other attendees understand a bit about CEQA. So we are certainly working closely on the environmental side. And in fact, the forest health grant projects that I had mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work for mitigation. So we're in areas now where we have significant kangaroo rat populations. And so we're doing mitigation methods and testing right now to make sure that the work we do doesn't impede their habitats. We work robustly with some of the other agencies that do environmental work. But the reality is, how do you kind of unify that and come together? And I think certainly the potential for a JPA-like structure that they have in Marin could help facilitate that now here. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of those agencies, Bruce. They all have a different set of interests. They have some shared interests, but maybe their interests aren't completely uniform. And then it becomes, how do those projects get funded? And when you can't find sustainable funding, it becomes more of a challenge to bring all of those environmental entities to the table at the same time with shared interests and a consistency to work on those goals, right? Because funding, if nothing else, breeds the ability to have consistency. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, this comes up because, of course, there is this. Marin was hoping that they could serve as a prototype,
yes,
for other places, and you know, I think your wise words about the difficulty of scaling up an organization like that and the time framework that it takes is probably an important reason why we haven't seen it copied in a lot of different areas.
yeah, absolutely. And look, and certainly in today's environment, as you well know, I don't think people are automatically opening with open arms on more taxation, right? But obviously, you know, you can convince people to spend money if you show how they're directly impacted. So more than glad to have a more robust conversation. And it sounds like you're working with Marin. I can make some introductions to the folks there. But Mark Brown and his folks at Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority have really done a true robust job in as an organization, as a model and a template to look towards.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Yeah, other questions? I've got a couple, but I want to let the audience have. I can talk to Seth when I want. Well, I guess I'd like to start a little bit of a dialogue. Maybe it's going to be a huge can of worms, but it sounds like the Fire Safe Council is taking an approach of, we already have the WUI, people are still moving in, let's try to work with what we have and solve it. So one thing that struck me, you had that image, I think 2 slides back, of the sprinkler system. And actually that house looks pretty good. Looks like there's not a lot of flammable material except right up in the front yard. And so
yes,
are you finding, is the Fire Safe Council even opening dialogue with homeowners of thinking about really, how do you really protect your property? So I've heard from David Hsu and a bunch of the insurance testing folks that if people really could give up on vegetation within 5 feet of their homes,
yes,
we'd be really far ahead. But that's part of sort of the American dream or right to have a beautiful yard. And so I just wanted to know if those conversations are even being had, or it's just a non-starter to talk to people about that.
No, in fact, and maybe I didn't make this clear, that's actually some of the foundational programs that we started on, and some of our more robust, what we call COE, community outreach and education programs. So we do defensible space. In fact, for those that know the area here, we have a contract with the Los Altos Hills Fire District, right? We help them maintain their defensible space. We have a chipping program. We do community education and outreach seminars, webinars on how do you maintain defensible space? What is zone 0? What is zone 1, right? The most important zone that you can maintain is 0 to 5 feet from your house. So we have a very robust defensible space program. That is one of the core foundational programs that the Fire Safe Council does. But one of the challenges is anytime you engage with people, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? And, if you don't have a wildfire, maybe the risk perception recedes to the back of your mind and it's not as prominent. We're also, on my staff, I have a really excellent manager of our hazardous fuels and community programs. Her name is Amanda Brenner Cannon. She is the FireWise community representative for Santa Clara County. Now, FireWise is a program by the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, for those that may not be familiar with it. And it is all about defensible space. It is all about maintaining your property, proper defensible space, clearing it, making sure that things like your eaves and the area and the plants around your home are non-flammable type of plants. We have 13 or 14 communities in Santa Clara County that the Fire Safe Council has brought on as established FireWise communities. And we've got another 4 or 5 in the works as I speak. So that is a big part of what we do. But, one of the challenges is, and it's the ongoing battle, is you can lead a horse to water, as the old, metaphor goes. But, we have one of the services that we provide is what we call an HIZ. It's a home impact zone inspection. We'll go and spend an hour on site with the homeowner, walk their property, show them where all the challenges are. These trees are too close to the house. You've got this or that kind of vegetation, whatever it may be. And in not all cases, we have many homeowners that are focused on addressing these issues. But maybe we come back 6 or 10 months later and we find that nothing has been done. And if it's in the summertime or springtime, the overgrowth has even gotten more challenging. And that's where our partners at Los Altos Hills have been quite ahead of the curve. They have a program that they are providing to the residents that allow for defensible space capabilities and incentives to help those homeowners focus on resiliency. So it's something that we do robustly, but it's really at the end of the day, Professor Fong, a homeowner has to have the proverbial skin in the game. We can only do so much. The fire agencies can only do so much. You have to take it upon yourself. And that's where the rubber always meets the road, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But thank you for that insight. So I think we're at time. For those of you listening in YouTube land, you see Seth's contact information there. So I'm sure he'd be happy to take follow-up questions. And those of you who have been here live, thank you for your attention. Of course, you can follow up with Seth or myself if you want to have continued conversations with Seth. So then again, Seth, thanks for your time today. Thank you for the valuable work you've been doing with the Fire Safe Council, and hoping to see everyone soon. Have a great Thanksgiving week. And we will resume 2 weeks from now to hear about one of Stanford's faculty and their research looking at embers in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. So see you then. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.